A good day, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Caterpillar Global Mining webinar on repair options. Today we're going to spend about a half an hour or so talking with you all about repair options and how Caterpillar and our dealers work together to deliver you a menu. But first of all, before we do our introductions, I'd like to take just a pause for 10 seconds and speak about safety. We've done our safety briefing here, and I would like to ask all of you, wherever you're at, to take 10 seconds, consider your safety, make sure your environment is correct, and that you have responders identified. So we'll pause for 10 seconds. So again, a Caterpillar and dealers strive to give customers the widest range of repair options that we can. We know that during economic cycles in mining, during different parts of the mine life, the job life, there are different needs that the equipment have. And as you approach the end of a life cycle, your maintenance strategies may in fact change. And so therefore, having a wide variety of repair options gives you the best ability to tailor your cost per hour, your cost per ton, and your total ownership cost to the right and lowest point. And that works out very well with Caterpillar product because Caterpillar designs reusability in to all of our product. So when you look at an individual component, we understand that there are some parts of that component that are quite expensive. They're have a long fatigue life, and so we take extra measure to build in not only a long life but a number of reusability and repair and salvage opportunities. And we'll discuss a little bit about that today. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panel. I'll start. I'm Dave Faber. I'm your moderator. I'm the General Manager of Service at Caterpillar, and it's my responsibility to ensure that we have those wide variety of repair options that are available to you. But I've got a lot of help in doing so. There are about 1,000 people at Caterpillar who come to work every single day on service in particular, and making sure that we have the right solutions for you. Joining me today, I've got a panel of some of our subject matter experts, and I'd like to have Brian introduce himself.
Terrific. Thanks, Dave. Hi, I'm Brian Lubers. I'm the Dealer Component Rebuild Support Manager, and my team and I work with the dealers around the world focused on their component rebuild centers. I've got about just over 28 years in with the company, and 25 of those in and around the mining industry and the mining equipment.
Mark.
Hi, I'm Mike Scott. I'm a Senior Parts and Service Marketing Consultant. Been with Caterpillar for 32 years. 28 of those have been in product support marketing. I've spent about 18 of those years in drivetrain marketing.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Gasper. I'm the Reman Marketing Consultant. I've been with Caterpillar a little over 22 years. The last 10 of those I've been with the Reman Product Group.
All right, Mike, so you've spent 20 some odd, almost 30 years at Caterpillar working with customers, working with dealers, spending an awful lot of time in the drivetrain area. But tell us about some of the repair options that we use in the mining industry, and give us some detail about when you would select which component.
Okay, well, for example, traditionally everybody thinks of a complete component rebuild. That's the normal rebuild, run it out for full life, rebuild it, put it back in. Now, that could be either done in the shop or it could be done as an exchange component. However, there's a lot of other options available out there. You could do anything as low as a rebear and reseal of a component, all the way up to buying a brand new component. It depends on the condition of the component. Realistically, you need to look at where am I at in the life of that component. Is it still running? And when I talk about that, we'll talk about repair before failure. Is it a before failure or after failure? If it's before failure, realistically you want to look at it in terms of when can I reuse the parts. And that's a big point to make here, because realistically a lot of people think of repair before failure as the last turn of the crank or the last turn of the final drive. And that's not a repair before failure. That can be a running failure at that point. You want to get it when it's at a point where you know it's getting close to the end of a life. The planned indicators suggest that it's getting close to the end of life, and maybe you've had just recently had one evidence of a problem indicator. At that point, you can go in and expect to get maximum reuse of parts.
So the old adage of like run it right up to the point of destruction isn't necessarily the best way to manage the product?
No, and I cringe every time I hear the term last turn of the crank, because at that point you've already lost.
You know, there's times when I've got the ability as a miner to plan, and I've got a budget cycle. You know, things work out pretty well when I can, but I don't always have that capability. So, you know, there's economic cycles. I get my budget cut sometimes as a mining operator, and I have to be flexible. What are some of the things that I can do to choose the right repair for my circumstance?
Well, first of all, talk to your dealer. Your dealers can help you look at the things that you need to be watching for your component to see where it's at in its life. First of all, sometimes you have to look at it and say, what is my best choice? Economically, I'd like to say everything is repair before failure, but the truth of the matter is you may have a time economically because of your current situation that it may not make sense. But it may, other times it could be totally opposite of that. It could be do it as early as possible, do that repair before failure, maybe even a rebear and reseal because I've got another component off the machine's already down, and I can get to this other component. I know it's getting close to the end of its life. Why not have one downtime instead of two?
It's a complex decision, and I'm glad that the dealer's there to help. All right, so Brian, I've made a decision. I've got to do a repair before failure. I've had some indicators. Tell me, when I go and engage with the dealer, what type of capabilities do they have? Do I only get one offering from them?
No, not at all, Dave. There's a variety of ways the dealer can support you. If we're talking about a repair option that is a rebearing or a reseal, they can do that pretty much anywhere within their organization, any of their service facilities. It might be on their mine site, it could be back at their branch. And then they have the option of the component rebuild that you had mentioned earlier, Mike. And most of the dealers, especially in the mining world, have component rebuild centers or CRCs. Those are facilities primarily centralized within their territory, focused on highly specialized, high volume rebuilding, 0-hour rebuilds of components, major components, primarily engines and powertrain components. Sometimes hydraulics is included in those as well. And this is the facility where they are taking that component down to the bare parts, doing all the cleaning operations and the inspections for reuse and salvage before they put it back together with the necessary new parts, test and get it back out to the customer. The one thing that you had mentioned, Mike, was about repair before failure. And that's really the key when you talk about a component rebuild. Because the success of a dealer component rebuild comes into how much can they reuse and what can they salvage. Most of these CRCs have machine shops where they have the capability to do salvage on some of those parts. If you're talking about engine blocks, you're talking about differential housings, they have thermal spray or flame spray capabilities, and then all the machining options to get those particular parts back to specification. And if they don't have parts within that component that are salvageable or that are reusable, then you're going to run the price of that rebuild up.
That's probably one of the biggest variables is in after failure repair. Oftentimes we put extra cost and money into parts in order to make them reusable, and oftentimes when they do go to failure, you lose the ability to capture that reuse.
And Dave, the comment there is it can be 2.5, 3 times more expensive to do an after failure versus a before failure. So the economics are there.
All right, so we talked about what the dealer can do. What's Caterpillar doing to support the dealer in terms of giving them the capabilities?
Well, we recognize the importance of our role in the dealer's success in rebuilding these components, we provide them with the tooling that's necessary to rebuild those based on how we are actually building those components up in the factory. We have reuse and salvage guides. We talked a lot about that, earlier, and that is key. We have salvage guidelines and we have reuse guidelines that are walking through step by step what the dealers can or shouldn't do with those particular parts in order for them to achieve the next life when that rebuild is done. And then in addition, we actually work with them on a one-on-one basis. We have standard work available to them in order for them to assemble or reassemble that component in the same manner that we would in our own factories.
So how do customers know that they're getting a good quality product?
Good question. In addition to those guidelines, we also give them test procedures. We give them direction on what testing machines or equipment that they need in order to validate that that component is ready for use out in the field. Whether that be the dyno, whether that be a hydraulic test stand, say for a transmission. We've given them the specifications on how that test stand should be built or how that dyno should be put together. And then we also give them the specifications on what we expect on the test and what the results should be in order for that to be ready to go.
So just in summarization then, dealers have the capability of offering anywhere from a high production, high turnover, 0-hour rebuild. They oftentimes offer exchange programs for dealers for customers to minimize their downtime. But they also have the flexibility to customize rebuilds for the individual needs. All of that capability in the local territory that they serve.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point is that dealer understand that application. They understand what those components are experiencing within the applications in that territory. And they're able to tailor the rebuild, or they're able to tailor the service strategy or the rebuild strategy with the customers in mind and what's best for his particular situation.
I think that's an important point because we always have people asking how long should a component last, and the dealers understand how long they last in those applications in their area because it can vary dramatically.
So how do we exchange information? Does Caterpillar get feedback from the dealers, and do we help other dealers understand how our machines are working?
We do. The makeup of my team involves people that are out in the field with the dealers, and every day they're working with them to improve their operations and to get that feedback from the dealers, from their CRCs. In addition, we pull together the dealer CRC managers on a regular basis and give them the opportunity to share what's going on within their facilities, what's working well, what's working in South America that we can apply, say, to a mine site in Australia or to a component being rebuilt in Australia. And that's key. They really appreciate the fact that, and the opportunity to pull them together to make sure that collectively we as a community, if you will, for these component rebuilds, that we're all working together for the same goal, and that is to get the lowest cost, the quickest turnaround, the highest quality component for those customers.
I just did some stat work on 2016, and there were over 16 million work order segments that our Cat dealers around the world opened and closed last year, and that information is very powerful, and our ability to access it, our ability to work with the dealer, understand what those repairs look like, how the parts are wearing, and then take that back to our engineering group to really either optimize the design of the part or optimize the reuse and salvage process. Again, just helps us further be able to deliver lower operating costs.
One of the areas that we're working on, Dave, now is using Cat Inspect and utilizing Cat Inspect, which is a tool that we have to be able to pull real time what those dealers are doing on the disassembly side, so that our engineers have ready information and visuals to see what kind of condition that those parts are coming off, which again drives the improvement long term with those components.
I think Cat Inspect's available to customers as well, or at least it soon will be. So again, just really helping our customers tell us how their product is working and wearing so that we can continue those 1,000 people that come to work every day looking for a better solution on the service side. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit because we talked a lot about what repair options are and how the dealer plays in that role, but there's a very large part of Caterpillar dedicated to supporting that process called Cat Reman.
Yes.
So Mark, Tell us what the reman role is and how it supports this.
Well, reman is a supporting role to the dealers. So, Brian, you spoke about being closer to the customer. Dealers can tailor that repair to be the best fit for that particular customer in that region. Well, reman, we have to make things a little more broad. We have to take the total population around the globe. So we have a full-on accepted next life product that we send out there. So it's not the smaller tailored rebuild, it's the full-on, came not the same amount of hours, comes with the same warranty as our new parts. And we have a gamut of 7,700 parts covering clear from down from a starter or alternator or a fuel injector, clear up to swing drive for a large mining shovel. And a lot of the salvage procedures that we have out there actually are helped develop at our Reman Technical Center down in Corinth, Mississippi. And we do collaborate a lot with our dealers. And in fact, just earlier this month, we had a dealer and a customer, a large coal customer, come in. We have developed a new salvage procedure for the top deck of the 3,500 blocks with a positive seal insert. And the customer was a little questioned. He wasn't real confident in that repair. So we brought him up to the factory with his dealer and sat him down with our engineering manager and manufacturing engineers and walked him through the process and took him out through the factory and showed him our operation. So it's something we're not trying to keep everybody in the dark. We just want everybody to be confident in the quality product they're going to get from our dealers.
I think most customers expect that Caterpillar spends a lot of money on R&D designing new machines, but we also spend significant amount of money every single year R&D development for a service and for better salvage procedures, better repair procedures, and a lot of that high-end R&D work is done with our Reman division because you see so many different components.
Right, and actually a lot of the salvage procedures we develop is a little more capital intensive that the dealers can't do. Some of them don't choose to invest, such as laser cladding. It's a procedure we use to salvage the bearing journal area on our spindles. We actually use a laser, melt the top level layer of the metal, and put some powdered metal back on top of it. And when that solidifies, it solidifies actually a little bit harder than the parent material and actually improves the bearing life. And since then, we've actually implemented that in the new side down in Decatur in our prime product as well.
I remember that was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We thought so much of the end product that salvage process did that we actually brought it into our factory and started doing it on new product so that we could even further slow down the wear rate on truck spindle journals. So very good. All right, so let's cover a little bit more about the product range that Reman has, because you have a number of smaller parts, piece parts. In fact, I don't know of a rebuild today that a dealer does that probably doesn't contain some of the Cat Reman product in it, whether it's an injector, water pump, or turbo cartridge. But you also offer all the way through major components for dealers that need to supplement. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's supposed to be complementary. So for dealer, you have a large population in your territory. You usually have your own exchange of some of the CRCs to work through. But if you don't have that big of a population or a smaller segment of machines, we have actually complete engines, and actually we have long blocks and short blocks, which cover a lot more broad, diverse range of engines. So you can actually just add the minor components you need. And again, as you say, many of our dealers, a lot of their rebuilds and their CRCs and their exchange use Reman minor components.
And it's interesting, Mark, because all of those, whether it's a short or long block or whether it's a complete engine or the sub-assemblies, a cylinder head or a cylinder back, for example, for an engine, they're all part of that strategy that a dealer uses, and they're all the levers that they pull depending on the situation for a customer or for a particular economic situation that the mining industry finds themselves, or the dealer finds themselves in.
Correct. And again, with Reman, since it's repair before failure, that is another key element in the Reman product strategy, because if you don't repair before failure, sometimes you might lose part of the value of that core that you send back to Caterpillar. So again, repair before failure is critical when it comes into the Reman exchange business.
So when I get a Reman, is it as good as a dealer rebuild? Is it as good as new? What's the life expectation on
It
a
should
Reman?
be. So if you pull out an engine out of 18,000 hours of operation, under the same set of conditions, the Reman product or the dealer rebuild product for that matter should be getting the same amount of hours out of that. So it should be equivalent to new. Whether you get new, Reman, or dealer exchange, you shouldn't notice any difference in the life of that product.
I think it's an important topic, because right now, with the cycle that we're in and the fact that the commodity prices in mining have started to bounce back, there's a whole lot of machines that are coming off the fence right now that need some type of rehabilitation or rebuild before they can go back in the line and be productive. And what we've seen here in the last 6 or 8 months are waves of rebuild kind of flowing around the world, and that has really increased the volume that our dealers are processing. I know there's a dealer in Australia who's capable of rebuilding 50 large engines a month, but there are months where his customer are demanding 65 or even 70, and in that case I know they're using remanufactured components in addition to their own rebuild capability to try and peak shave some of that demand. So,
well, Dave, we're also in a situation coming off the downturn in mining. There were a lot of repairs done during that period of time that were extending the hours of the component, not necessarily doing a full level rebuild. So now you've got to evaluate that component and say, what's it really going to require to get that back to a zero life component?
Right.
constantly evolving maintenance strategies.
Absolutely true.
All right, well, we're just about to the Q&A portion of the broadcast, so I'd like you to start thinking about questions that you may want to ask. There's a screen on your monitor there where you can start to type in a few questions. We'll handle a few more group issues, and then we'll go to Q&A. Okay, so group. I'm a customer. I've got to make some decisions about how I want to maintain my product, but once I've done that, then I need to start choosing. How do I choose dealer versus reman? Tell me how you would go about it.
Dealers will help you with that. I mean, again, it depends on where you're at. If you want a full-on life product and you want your core back, getting your core back is critical, then it's more of a dealer exchange if they have the capability and the capacity at that time to do that. If turnaround time is more improvement and you're getting your core back is not as important, you can utilize reman. And then again, the dealer can help you with those decisions. And the difference is when the dealer rebuilds something, they rebuild it back, you get back your engine, you get your block, your cylinder head. With reman, when an engine per se instance comes into our factory, we tear it down. The only thing that's kept together is the block and the main caps. All the other piece parts from that engine are scattered throughout the factory to various areas to be cleaned, inspected, and salvaged. And then they're put back in basically a parts warehouse. So when we assemble that engine coming down the line, we just basically pull parts from like a new parts bin, except they're remanufactured and salvaged parts. And they completely lose their identity, and then they begin that identity again, and they're a new engine. And again, it should be the same life as you got out of the original component.
And that's really the way it tends to work out. I remember 25 years ago talking to a group of maintenance managers up in Western Canada when reman was just first being introduced, and there was a fairly strong bias about not losing control of their core. But frankly, over the last 20 years or so, this has played out. Generally speaking, you're going to get what you need, and you're going to get a good full second life out of that remanufactured product. So those issues, I think, are playing out, and reman becomes or maintains a strong part of our supplement for dealer rebuild.
Well, Dave, I think too, when we're talking about the repair options, it really gets down to there's primary purchase drivers. How long do you plan on keeping the machine? How heavily are you utilizing the machine? What's affordability? It varies. Back 2 years ago in mining, affordability was everything. Now everybody's looking at how fast can you get it back? What's the availability of an exchange component? So those are different purchase drivers, and you move on those over time.
Yeah. So from a quality perspective, we've got a dealer exchange, a Caterpillar reman, with dealers able to access some of the more technically salvaged reman piece parts, et cetera. From a quality perspective, it's fairly uniform.
It is. It is. There's no difference. You should expect no difference between that dealer rebuild or the reman, or quite honestly, a new from the factory.
Our dealers are typically, quite well equipped, and probably 75% of the higher end reuse and salvage capabilities that we've developed for service over the years have been acquired and put in place. But again, where it's very technically or capital intensive or very low volume, again, reman makes that investment and then offers that reman piece part to supplement the dealer. So you're able to get the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Right. And the reman piece parts greatly improve the dealer's efficiency in doing their rebuilds.
All right. So we are going to switch gears here now, give our audience some time to ask some questions. I'll sort of play moderator and bounce some questions around to you guys.
All right.
All right, the first question off the screen is, can you give us a little bit more information on exactly what a reman product is? And we'll go to Mark for that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Yeah, like again, a reman product is, our parts are built to be rebuilt. And many of our engineers, actually we're prime product engineers at one point, so they know how to salvage that product. And again, it's different in that you don't always get your component back. It's built on an exchange business. And we have salvage procedures that we actually develop. Again, we publish those to the dealers. And it's exchange models. So you send us back a core, and we give you a good part that you should expect another life out of. So it's just a continuous cycle, and actually a lot of times, especially on some of our products or some of our salvage procedures, the fatigue life on some of those parts starts over. So some of those should be infinite life, depending on what the part is. Some do have a finite life, but most parts over their life have an infinite life with some of our salvage procedures. So again, it's a complementary thing to the dealer to help the dealer be more efficient, to get the customer that best and lowest O&O cost, increase their efficiency.
Very good. So the next question I think I'm going to toss to you, Mike. It's about upgrades and retrofits. So with all the machines, kind of that have been parked up for a couple of years, now coming back in, needing full overhaul before going back into the line, how do I find out if there's upgrades or retrofits that I could take advantage of during that rebuild?
Well, dealers can check literally by serial number prefix, go in and say, here's all the different things we have available. And they fall in different categories. It could be anything from things like performance upgrades. It could be safety upgrades. It could be operator comfort even. And my key thing on that, people ask, when do you do those? I said, well, if you're rebuilding the machine and you've already got the machine down, you've got that component out, why not consider it that time? You're not adding any additional downtime whatsoever, and you've got the potential of adding performance improvement, a fuel efficiency improvement. Those are big things for any customer.
You bet, to try and position yourself for lower operating costs or better performance.
Absolutely.
You bet. All right, well, there's a question on parts availability. So the question is, how long is it going to take to recover our stocking capability to address this upturn? I can tell you that there are many, many people that have been working long and hard on restoring adequate parts availability. The upturn really started taking hold in Australia back in the fourth quarter of 2016, and with that upturn, then we've seen waves of mining activity pick back up. At the same time, we've seen the oil and gas industry also pick up quite a bit. With those combination, a lot of the components and engines and transmission parts used in oil and gas are also used in mining. In some cases, we've seen incredible increases in demand. So we are working diligently. We are, putting our factories, back on full time, 3 shifts. We're working weekends. Our supply network is getting everything that they need in order to give us the raw material or some of the piece parts that we buy from our supply chain. When is it going to get better? It's already starting to get better in many cases. So some of the large bore engine, 3500 series engine, are kind of our biggest challenge, and we'll see recovery on those around the end of the fourth quarter. In the meantime, we are doing everything we can to make sure that the dealer rebuild centers and that customers have adequate parts to continue to flow product through their facilities. And we're also, being a little bit creative in looking at additional reuse and salvage options on some of the critically constrained parts. So the short answer is, by the end of the fourth quarter, into the first quarter, we'll definitely see recovery of back orders, and we should have our shelves pretty fully stocked by the end of the first quarter. In the meantime, you have our commitment that we will work tirelessly to make sure that we're shipping parts to keep lines up and running. That's the end of the questions that have come in from the audience, and so maybe we'll just do a final wrap up. Brian, have you got any final comments?
Yeah, Dave, thanks. Working with the dealers around the globe, specifically in their component rebuild centers, I'm amazed at their capability. at what they are able to do with the components coming in, their ability to reuse and salvage, and honestly, their ability to come up with new and better ways within the process itself to improve their operations. They are always striving to improve their operations, to improve their efficiency, to get their turnaround times better. And it just amazes me at what they're technically able to accomplish. And then their willingness to share back with Caterpillar and to share back with their other dealers. And so just really impressed with what happens within the walls of the CRCs, the quality that they're able to provide in those components that are being rebuilt, and the speed at which they're able to turn those around.
Mike.
I would say the thing I want to leave with everybody is focus on repair before failure. You've paid for a part that has reuse. Why not take advantage of it? The reusability is there. The key thing is get in early enough that you can get that reuse.
And maintain throughout the life of the component so that you've got the reuse at the end.
Absolutely. Keep your economic costs as low as possible.
Very good. Mark?
And I'd like to echo both what Brian and Mike have said. One is the collaboration with our dealers and our CRCs amongst each other, and also amongst Reman as well. Again, we had just a U.S. dealer in just earlier this month, and the week after that we had a South American dealer up talking about processes and looking at how we do things to help them and everybody be more efficient in what they do. And again, the repair before failure is key to the Reman strategy to make sure you don't lose that core value to help minimize your costs. So,
I guess my final comments would be just to thank you, our customer, our audience. We know that maintaining mining equipment, given the long life that this product has, given the economic cycles, is a real challenge. And circumstances change. You can't live with only one plan for the entire life of an asset. And so it takes some flexibility. I want you to know that we at Caterpillar are here to support it. We don't have all the answers, but we're certainly going to work hard to answer all the questions. And our dealers really do play a vital role in helping bridge that and localize and provide you the solutions that you need. So from our global headquarters here in Peoria, thanks for joining and have a safe day.